Hello everyone, welcome back to My Left Eye. It's not been a very good start to the week for Keith. As you've seen just there, 23 Labour councillors have resigned and 36 more have written a letter distancing themselves from his comments. We're going to take a look at a PR stunt that went terribly wrong as well when Starmer decided to show up unannounced at a mosque, and it really blew back in his face. We're going to take a look at that shortly. But first, back to this situation. Kier Starmer tried to go back on his earlier comments that supported Israel cutting off water and electricity to Gazans, and then in an interview with ITV just a few days later, he tried to go back on those comments. He also threw more fuel on the fire by saying that he realised that he'd upset some of his Muslim constituents, members of the Muslim community, and then a lot of people have pointed out it wasn't just members of the Muslim community who've been offended by his comments. There've been lots of people from all different faiths or people of no faith have said he was completely wrong to back Israel's actions, which have been described by the UN as a war crime. So let's hear from one of the councillors now as to why she's chosen to walk away from the Labour and stand as an independent at the next election.
Yes, so James, I'm now an independent councillor here in the city of Oxford, where I was born and raised. So I was a Labour councillor up until last week. It was a real honour for me to be elected as a Labour councillor in the city I was born and raised in, where I went to school, where my family live. So this isn't a decision that I made lightly. However, I had no other choice. I'm a former international aid worker of 15 years. I've worked for Oxfam, Save the Children, MSF, all around the world. I've spent all my life advocating for humanitarian aid, access into conflict zones, and also for the upholding of international law. And the leader of my party went on national radio while I was at the party conference in Liverpool as well, to say, basically, he was implying that Israel had a right to cut off electricity, water, and gas and food from the besieged population of Gaza. Now, alongside my colleague, Dr. Amar Latif, we both wrote to the national and local representatives of our party here in Oxford to ask them if they could really clarify these comments. In the meantime, more and more front bench MPs were going on television and radio to say the same thing. We did not get a response from our leadership, and so we decided to resign with a heavy heart. Now, since then, and particularly this morning, Lisa Nandy, who's a woman I have immense respect for and is the Shadow International Development Secretary, no less, has been on the BBC where she was asked multiple times by Victoria Derbyshire if she condemned effectively collective punishment of civilians in Gaza, and whether she was against Israel withholding those services, water, gas, electricity, and food. And she couldn't give a response. I think it's absolutely incredible that almost 2 weeks into this horrifying conflict, where Israelis are mourning their children and the people that have been killed in terrorist attacks by Hamas, and indeed waiting for their hostages to be returned, and increasing numbers of civilians are dying in Gaza, that this is the sort of line that's coming from potentially our next future government.
Yeah, and the only response that they have, of course, been giving is this Israel has a right to defend itself line. And as we pointed out before, this isn't even a valid response, even though it's dodging the question, because these are occupied lands that we're talking about, illegally occupied lands, and the actions of Israel is what is known as collective punishment. And the same goes for displacing large amounts of people, 1.1 million being told to move to the south of Gaza.
And our government's doing no better. Meanwhile, in Israel, where people are mourning and where they are scared and where they are trying to hide from Hamas rockets, there's more call for peace. There is more call for, justice for Israelis and Palestinians. And for those of us who don't live in Israel or Palestine, for those of us who are outside of that context, we need to be really aware of what we're saying and what we're doing. So I, in good consciousness, could no longer stay as a representative of the Labour Party, and I had no choice.
And there you have it, 23 councillors in total, and this councillor having worked with human rights causes for such a long time, as she said in the interview there, clearly had no other choice. In all good consciousness, she can't back a party that approves of illegal war crimes. As I mentioned, Kier Starmer's been caught out again, so his reaction to the backlash over his comments has been to try a PR stunt, an appearance at a mosque, but this has flown back in his face. He just can't seem to get anything right this week. This article comes from Squawk Box, and it says here, Starmer's been trying to repair his relationship with the Muslim community through a surprise visit to a mosque in Wales. The following was shared by a scholar friend of mine during this morning. He spoke to the Imam of the South Wales Islamic Centre, Sheikh Mohammed, who's an Egyptian, over the phone about these images which are being used by Kier Starmer as propaganda and public relations to dilute and sanctify his statement in support of war crimes and genocide. I don't know this Imam personally. I didn't know anything about him and had not spoken to him before this telephone conversation, he says. The conclusion of which is that the South Wales Islamic Centre did not invite Kier Starmer. He was in Wales and his people made a phone call to the South Wales Islamic Centre expressing their desire to come and visit the centre. The Imam did not know who Kier Starmer was before he met him. He's Egyptian, can barely speak or read English and doesn't follow local politics. He was also not aware of what Kier Starmer had said in support of genocide and war crimes. He wishes he'd researched online before agreeing to meet him. Even if he had, he doubted he would have found anything in Arabic. So what's important is this part here. The Imam was unaware that this visit would be exploited for propaganda and public relations. He was shocked when the angry phone calls started coming in from various communities and disappointed to see how the pictures from the visit were being used by Kier Starmer on social media for propaganda issues. And the final point there, he says he cried as he explained that he would never betray Palestinians by associating or collaborating in the propaganda of anyone who supports war crimes and genocide against them. I believe everything he told me. The South Wales Islamic Centre and its committee should clean this mess. Quite a mess indeed. And that's pretty low tactics as well, to try and wash over his comments with a PR stunt at a mosque. Race baiting, some would say. It's not just members of the Muslim community, as we said, who were offended by his comments. People of all faiths and people of no faith have also been deeply offended by his comments and are deeply shocked by the action that Israel took. So that's the latest, and it's only the start of the week. There's still plenty more time for cock-ups from Keith, but we'll try and keep you up to date on those. Unfortunately, as this situation between Israel and Palestine goes on, the UN agencies recently warned Gaza operations could end tomorrow without more fuel. They're in desperate need of supplies. Some people have started to return north despite the risks, and Israel have said it will be relentless in its attacks on Gazans. But we've also seen some of the hostages taken by Hamas released recently as well. So that's the latest on the situation at the moment. We'll try and keep you up to date with that, and also any more of Keith's cock-ups. Thanks a lot for being with us on My Left Eye. Until next time, look after yourselves.